we need the information for consolidating the outcomes of this meeting. So if you can please do so. If there's still something critical that you are working on. Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. We'll go into the discussion segment. I don't know to start with. Are there any questions, clarifications?
Thank you very much. Group 2, was it? Yes, Group 2. Yeah, thank you. I'm not sure whether I heard right. I heard you describe ZANET as an opportunity for internet. I'm not sure what you said there, so can I please request what are you saying about ZANET? And the other question that I have was, there was a suggestion that you said government should produce a level playing field. Again, I'm not sure exactly what you meant. As well as when you talked about people abusing the internet, I wasn't sure what you meant. Those 3 areas.
I'll start from the last question. Talking about the abuse of internet. There was a presenter from yesterday. He said that most of our data that we are using, especially through the phones, is actually people are searching through pornographic sites. And I would want to believe it's an element of abuse somewhere, somehow. And when we talked about ZANET, from the little information that we got, it seemed as if ZANET was supposed to be spearheading the issue of research and development. And it has tended to ignore this aspect. So we thought that if ZANET maybe through, or I don't know, through POTRAS or through the government, can actually get funding so that they can improve on access to internet towards schools and marginalized communities. So we saw it as an opportunity whereby they can actually approach government or in other private players so that they can help in terms of provision of access to the internet that we want. And the third question was on.
Yes, there was clarification on you were saying government must produce a level playing field.
I'm an information researcher by profession. And I tend to base on, in terms of the legislative framework. I'll cite for an example. Some time ago, there was an issue of base station sharing. And one of the players was actually complaining on what the government was bringing in for them to share the base stations. They were complaining of an uneven field whereby they did much of the work. Then the government comes in and says, let the telecommunication providers share what they actually worked on as a company themselves. So what we're saying is, in terms of leveling the playing field, is if somebody has this, and if the government is going to come in, what is it that is it going to provide to those who have already made strides in that field? Maybe this can come through incentives, or even coming up with legislation saying that if A has this, you get so much, or you will be reimbursed for what they did.
I don't want to give Mr. Gwatito the mic again because I know you complicate his questions. So maybe I'll give him an opportunity after. the other guys have maybe made an input. Maybe, I don't know, are there any other questions, or we give Mr. Kwanzizo? If there are no other questions, then I'll give Mr. Kwanzizo to seek further clarification.
No, I am very grateful because I understood where they were coming from and what they were saying. But with respect to them, I don't agree with them. And if you allow me, I will say what I think on those issues. Am I allowed? Thank you very much. I don't think that to use the example that you used, when one player had developed infrastructure that was a utility infrastructure for everyone in the country, that they were within their rights to say, I will not share. I think the policy intervention actually that we want is that when a private player creates utility infrastructure, then there should be openness a type of regulation that is not uniform. When you have a big player, you regulate them differently to when you have a smaller player. Because what you want to do is to keep the utility infrastructure open, especially to new entrants. And the part of giving Zanet, who's a state player, a semi-monopoly in a field or a semi-monopoly for R&D, I don't think that necessarily brings us to the best in terms of cost and access. Because what, by their own admission, brings us there is competition and the availability of multiple service providers. So to promote the creation of a single entity that is given dominance over a particular field runs contrary to that. That's my opinion. And as I make my opinion, I've just said through what I'm not really expecting to get an argument where they disagree. As I make my opinion, I'll just say through my last opinion, I'm not really expecting to get an argument where they disagree. My last opinion is on this term. I know they gave an example of pornography. There's this term that is finding currency that people are abusing the internet. I think maybe because somebody uses the internet to a different way to where another person uses. We should respect the different uses to which people put the internet. If you take rat poison, you can use it to kill rats, but you can also use it to kill yourself. That's not abuse. It's an appropriate tool for different uses. So, the important thing is we must encourage each one of us to find ways to use the internet that improve your quality of life. Because I want us to tackle the specific example of porn, but you've heard uses of social media, which have been called abuse of the internet. Maybe because somebody has been smart enough to acquire data and gain market advantage, maybe in a political campaign, does not mean they are abusing it. They just realize an opportunity and they use it. So I think what we need to encourage more is respect for the different uses of the internet and not label certain uses or fall prey to creating prejudices by calling it abuse of the internet. There are different uses that everybody use, and let's encourage people to use the internet to improve the quality of life. That would be my input.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gwatizo. I don't know if anyone else has a contribution to make a question to.
Just for clarification, I'll pose this as a question to Mr. Gwatizo. Did you say that usage of porn is abuse or not abuse? I just didn't get that, but I wanted to clarification or as a matter of fact, and just to control.
I will not give the mic back to Mr. Gwatizo. I will comment as the MC from my own perspective. Porn is an industry that is thriving. In some other countries, it's actually licensed. So it just depends on your perspective and where you're coming from. I don't know, maybe in this country it's illegal. If it's illegal, maybe that is where the term abuse is coming from. But there's so many countries where it's legal and people can access it without any fear of repercussions by the law. So it's an issue of perspective, your values, where you're coming from and where you're going to term it as abuse or non-abuse. I think it's an issue that we can debate until tomorrow and not come up with a solution. Okay, any other questions or contributions? Okay.
I'm sorry to say, I'm more like taking movement to that issue of porn. I'm arguing from the educational point of view, because we are educators, and we are much worried when you cite issues that are affecting us. We are here, this forum I want to understand is to come up with the ethical policies maybe on the usage of internet, isn't it? We are trying to craft our own policies for our own nation. So telling watching porn something illegal, I think from our perspective as Zimbabweans, I think it's good.
I ask you, because there's an issue of illegal and abusing. I don't know whether they're the same thing and whether they're the same meaning. It might be legal at law, but does that necessarily mean that someone who's using the internet to do that is abusing the internet?
Maybe I might not be good enough to say legal language or legal jargons, but I want to believe if you put it as, or if you agree as a nation that this is illegal, then it becomes illegal. I think there is a hand out there. Someone wants to.
So if there are any other issues that we need to discuss, it's a different issue from the issue of porn. Alright, so this one is an issue of semantics about abuse of abuse. I can't agree.
Thank you. I will tackle the pornography issue from a legal point of view. I'm a lawyer. There is a fine line between that which is legal and that which is moral. Law is law, whether good or bad, whether moral or immoral. So the question of legality is absolute. It's set in stone. Pornography is illegal. There are a number of statutes that illegalize pornography. And distributing pornographic material is also illegal in terms of the Censorship Act. Now, given that it is illegal, the next inquiry becomes, is it immoral? This is where we have a debate. This is where we are allowed to exercise our discretion. There are some people who see nothing wrong with watching it and acting it, and even distributing it. You should not indict those people, even if we are in Zimbabwe, because they still enjoy freedom of expression as guaranteed by Section 60 and 61 of the Constitution. So, in as much as we agree that porn is illegal, what we retain is our right to defend pornography at a policy level. I'm not saying I'm defending it. But on that token, I now agree with Mr. Kwatiso, because what Mr. Kwatiso's contribution sums up to is simply the assertion that abuse is very subjective. Abuse to one person is use to another person. The way we view abuse is really subjective. It's based on our nuances, our experiences, where we are coming from. So one person's use of the internet is another person's abuse of the internet. Yes.
So maybe I can sum it up to say, since this is an internet governance forum, because basically internet governance, this is a multi-stakeholder forum, where we're saying people from the various backgrounds and so forth are coming together to map a way forward. So I think maybe if we do away with words like abuse and, because it's something that we'll never agree on, to say, is this proper use of the internet or is this abuse of the internet? It's very subjective. Yeah, so we can just say everyone is using, maybe in a way I don't agree with, the next person is using in a way I agree with. It's almost. Okay, another person. Okay, a contribution from one of the Access members.
Okay, pardon me, when we use the term abuse, we actually coined the wrong term. What we actually mean by threat, on a network perspective, pornographic sites, they include worms, spy bots, and all that kind of malware. So here, our country doesn't have a national threat sense detection. So I can give an example. If one child opens a pornographic website, it can actually infiltrate other computers which may be in the same network until maybe one of our servers may crash or may not be workable again. So that's what we actually meant here. That's the threat we were actually talking about. Thank you.
All right. I think we are running out of time. We'll go to Mr. Kwatiso Jr. to abuse. He's trying to explain the way that.
I think the lawyer has explained everything quite well. But in terms of access, the problem I have, especially within our Zimbabwe, is that we make the mistake of making pronouncements thinking that Zimbabwe is just one homogeneous community, which is wrong. There's no one singular Zimbabwean identity beyond the fact that we are in this colonial border. So when we are making these pronouncements here, we must understand that we are infinitely diverse. There are more races, cultures, languages that we can possibly imagine to enumerate. So when we are making that, let's have open access to internet. Let's make it open to the extent that we cater for everyone and not just say, because of my Christian sensibilities, this becomes abuse, this becomes not abuse, or because of such and such school of thought, this becomes abuse, or this becomes not abuse, because this is the way I think. Yeah, that's all.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Kwatiso. I don't know if there are any other questions that are not related to this issue, because I think we have debated this enough. All right, if there are no other issues or contributions to the issue of access, let's just give a round of applause to Group 2. They haven't said. Okay, may you go and sit with them and try maybe using some Okay, which group is coming to present next? Which group is ready? Those who are ready, okay. No, you can go. Okay, we'll have the next presentation from Group 1, who we're looking at cybercrime and cybersecurity.
Good afternoon. As Group 1, we prefaced, excuse me. Right, I can resume. As Group 1, we prefaced our discussion with the realization that the fact that we are here is good. It evinces that we have a strength. Our strength is that we are willing to do something to get out of the comatose of being vulnerable from a cybersecurity perspective. We have the intention, ladies and gentlemen. But we also realize that there have been many a forum where such topics have been discussed, which means that these are telltale signs that just the intention may not be enough. Perhaps the intention needs to be corroborated by adoption and implementation. As it went, ladies and gentlemen, an intention to eat will never eradicate hunger. So it is on this basis that we came up with the different discussion points. It is on this premise that we confronted a number of questions as they were given to us by the chair. The first question was, what are the current challenges and weaknesses from a cybercrime and cybersecurity perspective? The first challenge that we identified as Group 1 is that there is no awareness. People are simply unaware, both quantitatively and qualitatively. The nature of information that goes around to conscientize people on cybersecurity issues is inadequate. The quality of information is also highly inadequate. So given that realization, people are unaware and something needs to be done. What needs to be done will be discussed under solutions. The second realization we made is that the laws are inadequate. Currently, cybercrime, the entire framework of cybercrime is regulated in terms of the Criminal Law Codification and Reform Act, that's Chapter 923. And that is not enough to cover and encapsulate the entire framework of cybersecurity. So there is a gap in that respect, and it is a gap which needs to be filled. Again, we'll get to that when we look at the solutions. We also realize that there is no coordination. There is no multi-sectoral coordination. The different sectors of our economy, of our politics, are not well coordinated enough to put up an effort that can combat the cybersecurity threats and cyber criminal gaps that we have in Zimbabwe. The second discussion point was, how can availability and accessibility of internet be enhanced, focusing on the thematic topic. The thematic topic being cybercrime and cybersecurity. We realize that accessibility is a major problem, and there is lack of priority in granting accessibility of internet. So we suggested that there should be enactment of laws that foster net neutrality, that enhance net neutrality, such that services on the internet can be more, people can access services better on the internet. So that was one way in which we can improve. Then we should also encourage prioritization of cybersecurity issues. Accessibility is only a function of how much we invest into cybersecurity. So the moment we prioritize such issues, that will be the moment when we will be able to foster accessibility and to enhance people's accessibility of cybersecurity related information. The third question, which is a pivotal question in this discourse, was, what are our strengths? And this was a very contentious question in our group. One viewpoint was that we do not have strengths at all. Given that our laws are lax, there is a widening gap in our laws. Like I said earlier, all we have to date, also for strategic assistance in other respects. We can also utilize our bilateral and multilateral relationships with other nations in order to come up with treaties and conventions that are cyber security related and that will help us mitigate cyber crime at a regional level. We already have the AU Convention, which we recommend should be ratified by our government. We have other international law instruments such as the United Nations UNOTC and the Budapest Convention, which although in Europe could give us guidelines on how to tackle cyber security threats. So that is a great source of opportunity. The fourth question we confronted was, what could be the solutions? The first solution, ladies and gentlemen, was the setting up of a CERT, which is a cyber emergency response team. A response team which will be able to respond to threats as and when they come, even before they come. Whilst the threat has emerged in other jurisdictions, that team will be able to foresee it and tackle it before it affects people here. There was also a recommendation that we adopt intelligence sharing, the sharing of information with other institutions and organizations, to have a platform where institutions can report security threats as and when they attack them, such that other institutions can prevent similar attacks. That way we'll be able to tackle the cyber security issue from a collective perspective. We also recommended that we have a community of cyber experts, and realizing that cyber security is a security issue, yet it is not treated often as a security issue. There was a suggestion that our security forces must adopt cyber security as a top priority. Gone are the days when all one needed to join the army or the police was physical fitness. Now mental aptitude will play a great role. We also recommended that we adopt the following resources, which was the seventh question. What resources are needed? Finance. Money makes the world go round. So there was a suggestion that money be pumped in at institutional and national level. There was also a suggestion that we bring in our human resource, which was a strength. We said we'll bring in our human resource to deal with cyber security problems. So money, human resource, and technology, infrastructure. There needs to be investment in infrastructure, and that is related to money. So in the end, the buck stops at money. The eighth and last question, what is the recommended way forward? The recommended way forward is that we should adopt binding legislation on cyber law and cyber security. We should adopt binding legislation on cyber law and cyber security. It is also recommended that we enlist the services of technical experts from an international level to come and assist us, and also that we train and enhance capacity in academic and training institutions. It is also recommended that our research institutions are provided with funding and support from a multi-sectoral perspective. That, ladies and gentlemen, is what we came up with as Group 1.
Thank you so much, Group 1. Questions, contributions?
I just have one contribution on the way forward of enlisting experts. I think the specific mention was to international experts. My contribution is that I hope this is not being done at the expense of local experts. We have local expertise here which meets any, they are world class. And one of the things that we've done as a country is bypass our local experts and reach for people who are not even experts when compared to our locals. So I hope that when we're making that recommendation and calling for international experts, they are there. But I think it mustn't be done at the expense of local expertise, which we have in abundance.
Thank you very much, Mr. Batito. Contribution to say we should use our local international experts so that when they go out there, they should always come back home to the local experts as well. Any other contributions? Okay, maybe an issue that I noted of interest that maybe the regulator and maybe the ministry should take note of is there was a very important recommendation which resonated with one of the recommendations that was made by Mr. Kwatizo in the morning to say we should use universal service fund for some of these issues. This is not a typical access issue where universal fund was normally targeted. So maybe it's time that the regulator and the policymakers should start thinking of access and service outside of the traditional sense. Because as it is right now, we have WhatsApp coming from some very remote areas. So what it means is maybe people now have access in a certain sense, but now we need to up on the service and look at how we can use that fund for other uses. Okay. Any other contribution or question? Okay, if there aren't any, may we give a round of applause to the presenter. Okay, our next presentation will come from Group 4, who are looking at the issues of privacy and data protection. Do you want to present?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am representing Group 4, which was discussing on privacy and data protection. I don't want to take much of your time, so I will just run down what we have here, because most of the things were said earlier. On question 1, which is, what are the current challenges or weaknesses affecting privacy and data protection? We came up with a number of issues. On number 1, we noted that most of the servers, or almost every server of common services, are hosted outside our borders. So that means we do not have control over that data. But other jurisdictions out there can have access anytime to our data. And that jeopardizes our privacy and our security online. Another point was the need for riches or wealth. We noted that data is now the new money. A lot of people out there can just hack our systems to get our data and then sell that data for money. So it's a challenge we have. as a nation. Another issue was the lack of cyber laws. I think it was mentioned earlier and also yesterday it was mentioned, so I won't dwell on that one. Another challenge we have is transitions in politics. This can lead to policy inconsistency or policy discontinuity, because a political leader has got his own vision, and when he is removed or when he steps down, a new leader can map a new way forward, which contradicts or departs from the path that was set by his predecessor. Another challenge or weakness that we noted is lack of coordination and collaboration among stakeholders. We have all over the world have been infringing privacy of their citizens. They've been intruding their privacy because they want to prevent crimes from being committed. So they prefer taking a proactive approach than a reactive approach, whereby they would wait for criminals to act and then they would act later. We also noted that there is lack of resources to protect our own data. On that one, we noted that the government lacks technical proficiency, forcing people to use, for example, Gmail. A lot of people here, or almost everyone here, has got a Gmail account, and if they have a government account, they are not using it, or they are not constantly using it, because the network will be intermittent on a usual basis. There is also the lack of awareness. We've noted that passwords that are being put by people are very weak. For example, they use birthdays, names of their kids, etc., of which, as noted yesterday, that information will be online already. They would have posted that information on their social media pages or platforms. Again, there is this use of terms and conditions we do not comprehend or understand. We can read and reread, but sometimes we do not understand what they mean. So we end up selling our data to service providers. For example, WhatsApp, Instagram, they tell us that they will have access to our cameras, etc., but we still agree to those terms and conditions. On number 2, how can availability and accessibility of internet be enhanced, focusing on privacy and data protection? We noted that we can enhance availability and accessibility by subsidizing the internet to allow users to have more access to more information about privacy and data protection. We've noted that some actions by people are caused by ignorance. They do not know what it is to be vulnerable on the internet or online. Again, we can enhance that by strong data encryption. People prefer, for example, hotspots which have got passwords, because those which are open also to criminals who can hack their data. So people would like those which are encrypted. Unlike the previous presenter, we have got strengths we noted that we have as a nation. For example, we have the skills or human capital. There was a presenter from HIT yesterday who noted that they are training students on cyber issues. So we can tap on that one and use it. So we can capitalize on that one. It can be a strength. Also, the high literacy rate we have as a nation can be used to enhance data protection. Again, we are still at initial stages of embracing the internet. So we have lots of lessons to learn from experiences of other countries. Unlike those countries which were venturing into unknown territories, we have known what they went through, so we can use that one as to our advantage. Again, we noted that there is this mantra, the Open for Business mantra. This can bring in new ideas. It is a platform or a foundation that allows people to be open to bring new ideas. For example, discussions on POSA and IBA are already underway. As a result of this mantra, Zimbabwe is open for business. On opportunities, we only noted that we can have homegrown solutions. It's an opportunity that can be embraced. We have kids who are being produced from schools, from all institutions. So these can develop solutions which best suit our issues. I'll go to threats. That's number 5. One of the threats we noted is that the bulk of data is in the hands of private players. They are business oriented, unlike the government, which takes security of citizens as its sole and primary responsibility. So the government maybe would have to come as a regulator to regulate the activities of these players. We noted also that we lack resources, and with this we mean human, financial, technical, etc. Also corruption. I think newspapers, televisions are awash with information on corruption, so we won't draw much on this one. Another challenge is that other countries are already ahead as far as using the internet is concerned. They've invested much on intelligence and espionage. We have noted earlier that during the Obama administration, there was spying on the Prime Minister of Yemen. And that can happen also on Zimbabwe. Because we are so vulnerable, we are so open, we don't have mechanisms to protect ourselves. So it's a threat to us also. On solutions, we just took these challenges or threats we mentioned above and we prescribed solutions to those. So I will just mention those and not discuss. Our solutions were collaboration, investing in security and intelligence, regulations, for example, on corruption. Other jurisdictions have strict measures on corruption. In China, corruption attracts a death penalty. So, although I am not saying we should adopt this, but we can have strict measures on corruption. Also, we can have directed taxation policy. This is to ensure capacity building on the part of government and other stakeholders. At the moment, we are having taxes which come from the ICT sector, funding other sectors, neglecting the ICT sector. But if we would take something from those taxes to fund initiatives that are specifically ICT in nature, we can manage to protect ourselves on the cyberspace. on number 7, which says what kinds of resources are needed for the solutions to be implemented. On education and awareness, we noted that we would need skilled human resources to influence mindset shift or paradigm shift, because people do not know and some are so resistant to change as far as ICTs are concerned. We also need technological capacity, financial resources, and the political will. Our recommendations to all the above issues are as follows. Number 1, under policy, we would need a policy stating that trusteeship of the consumer fund has to be in the hands of consumers and not in the hands of the regulator. We also need a policy on import substitution. We also need a policy on regional integration and harmonization of policies and laws. We also need a speedy enactment of cyber laws. Under technical, we would need more resources on the acquisition of technical resources and skills. Under socio-economical, we would need improving on accountability and good governance. We didn't find anything on environmental. We noted that maybe it would fit more with other groups than ours. Under research, we noted that we would need more resources on research and promote use of locally designed tools and hardware. Under others, we noted that there is need for privatization of state-owned enterprises. And I think this is already underway. The government is intending to partially privatize its state-owned enterprises. So as a group, we advocate total privatization, because we've noted that under government, these state-owned enterprises have been underperforming compared to their counterparts, which are privately owned. Again, the government has to ensure competition. It also has to enhance competition by removing hurdles that are in front of new entrants. Those new applicants have to find it easy to come into the ICT sector. So it is the duty of government to do that. And competition will help in making the market regulate itself. Prices will go down because there will be competition. Players will be competing on services being provided. So the quality of services that is being offered will lure consumers, and that will bring competition amongst players. I think that's all we had as a group. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Group 4, for that presentation. Feedback, comments, or questions?
It's definitely not about pornography. It's a different set of questions altogether. I think I'll throw a couple of questions as far as your presentation was concerned. I think the first issue that I noted in your first presentation was an issue of data hosting outside Zimbabwe, where you say that it's a risk. I want to fully understand why you strongly agree that hosting data outside Zimbabwe is a risk and it's a national risk. Because I'm actually of a mindset that we cannot, or we are not yet at a level where we would want to host private data as Zimbabweans. with issues of connectivity, reliability, uptime, and privacy as well. I think that we would rather trust our privacy with other professional companies that we have there world over, which actually do respect the right of privacy within individuals. That's what I strongly feel. So I'm posing that as a question to you. The second one, you said governments must intrude or must intercept information in the name of security. I don't know, that's certainly intercept information or intrude our privacy in the name of security. Is that a general agreement that you guys had as a group, and should that be taken seriously from stakeholders who are going to be constructing towards the ICT policy? Last but not least, when you're closing through, I found you to be very much contradiction to what you've been saying, where you said that you are advocating for total privatization, and a few seconds back you were saying the state should be given power. Now you're saying that you actually are for the same idea that the same state-owned parasitas should be privatized, which actually goes against what you've been advocating for. If you may want to just clarify on those issues, because
I think we were guided by the questions we were given. For example, on question 1, what are the current challenges? That was the question. So we said a challenge we have is that of national security, or need for national security. That's a challenge. So the government would need to intrude or intercept data to avoid criminal activities. We were mentioning challenges.
Sorry,
response to the challenge.
Sorry, I can only...
I'm questioning your response to the challenge. I'm okay with the question, but your response to the challenge doesn't have
I also want to add to the question because he's asking to say, I'm getting to say, you said you identified the challenge being a threat to national data.
To privacy and data protection.
You said a national threat.
The need for national security is a threat to privacy and data protection.
Okay, in terms of what, because I'm not very sure, in terms of infrastructure, the national infrastructure, in terms of individuals, what exactly?
The government needs to protect citizens from attacks by criminals. So in doing so, it will end up intercepting data. That's
like someone who wants to hack into my Yahoo, the government should know in advance that someone is trying to hack into my Yahoo.
That's what is happening in other jurisdictions.
All right, that's the part I didn't understand.
I was the member of the group. I also want to address what my colleague is saying. When he's saying the need for national security can have an impact on the privacy and data protection. We've read in a number of articles, even in the Snowden revelation, where it is official for the sake of protecting the Americans that the intelligence were authorized to intercept on its own. Whether we will discuss afterwards that is this good or not, but on its own is a trend now with a number of countries that because of the need of national security, they are doing this. Whether as citizens we are not happy or we are not comfortable, but this thing is happening, it's a fact. So on its own, it's infringed on the privacy and data protection. That was the angle that we're coming from. On the realities.
Maybe you can explain the challenge more, so that, because I think there's the issue of the challenge and the solution here intertwined. So I think That's why your question was coming in to say maybe he doesn't understand which one is the challenge and which one is the solution.
That is the challenge, was the challenges and the weaknesses. The challenge being the need for national security, the need for the government to protect its citizens, and because of that, the trend has been that the government is now doing some spoofing on the national data for the sake of protecting its citizens. On its own, it's a challenge to privacy and data protection. So the solutions may be, we need maybe like what people were saying, for example, our own Interception and Communications Act. Some people were having some input, human rights. No, let's have clear definition of who is doing what at what time and on what circumstances. Maybe the clear definition of also maybe. But those things, for the sake of national security, all states worldwide, they are doing it. Maybe the solution is on the laws. Do you know, apply what I just saying and how, but it's there. And that one, it has got an impact on the privacy and data protection. That was my point.
Okay, I see many hands. Are they all follow-ups to this question? I see him first. Is this a follow-up to this one?
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. But there's also a follow-up.
As a member of the group, I wanted to add our thing.
All right.
If others who are not members of the group can accept it.
Maybe I will start with the follow-up so that at least maybe you have the solid questions and then you can respond. Is also a follow-up?
Yeah. It's like a comment supporting.
So maybe let me have him who is following.
I'll follow up to my question.
Because maybe you might have a response already to your follow-up.
Yeah, maybe you can have it. Maybe you can answer it. How close to the
government and want to make the benefit, but only cause that is the inside threat. So, in trying to address inside threat, you should monitor what is inside. So, if we think that all the threat is going to come from outside, then we may end up saying the government should not maybe intercept communication or monitor what is happening inside. But you check from organizations, you need to know what is happening inside, because the threat can be inside. So in trying to deal with inside threats, that's why governments will always monitor. In cases of Snowden, we find out there was an issue of inside threat, because someone was inside the first and they need to make some of these secrets.
Okay. You still want to follow up?
Yeah, I'll do after this, okay? Huh? I'll do after definitely.
After Mr. Batizo?
Yeah, I just want to.
Through you, moderator, can I invite the to actually state what his concern is? Because he seems to be saying, are you saying, what are you saying? So that we can respond from everything.
If I was Mr. Batizo, I would say, can you ask the question again? Because you are the one who seems to understand it. Because these guys are already responding the same question. So, yeah, now I will, for your benefit, I will definitely repeat the question. These guys have identified a challenge, which they said interception, as far as I understood his presentation. It was a challenge of interception of information, right? And then his recommendation was also that it was a good idea. That was the first question. So this was your recommendation that government should be allowed to intercept, which he also dabbled around the same question. So I was actually asking against a recommendation from policymakers to say, so do we or must we be found recommending or saying it is a good idea for the governments to be allowed to intercept privacy information? For me, which was an issue of balancing of security versus privacy. And the Snowden issue, I don't know how it comes through in this whole issue. As far as I know, Snowden was a soldier, he was an internal problem, yes, but he was not the guy who was taking the information, he was the guy who actually told the world that this is what we're doing. Simply because the Americans are doing something, it does not mean that they are setting a precedence for the whole world. If it's wrong, it's wrong. If it's privacy information that has been intercepted, it's privacy information that has been intercepted. It does not make it right simply because the Americans are also wrong.
Thank you. I will now understand and can attempt a response.
Okay, maybe before you respond, are those follow-up questions or clarifications? Yes, to which one? Yeah? It's a follow-up question. Okay, you have forgotten.
Can you finish so that I can deal with them individually? This one is a follow-up contribution.
In the interest of time and so forth, which ones are members of Group 2? Are you also a member of Group 2?
I was a member of one session and some personal issues.
Okay, so let's give him an opportunity and then you can respond overally.
But it's the government.
Yes.
But he's a member of the Group 2. Let the non-members speak. Let the group members get
It is the government. You can't speak now. Once he speaks,
no,
you can't speak now. No, you can't.
Okay.
All right.
I'll give you an analogy. We all have our houses, right? And our cars. But sometimes there comes a time where the government, through the police, have to search our cars or our houses, right? As long as they have a warrant. So I'm for the idea that as long as government, as the authority, they have obtained the proper legal document to search our internet traffic, they should be allowed to do that if it is to protect us or to help in an investigation. I think it's okay for them to search.
Okay, I think so that we don't go back to them, you are saying the government should get a permanent search warrant on the internet.
It's not a permanent search. I think all the countries have different acts which allow them to look at traffic that's going on the internet. It's not just a blanket. Yes.
I want to support that by saying there is a reason why governments exist in the first place. Governments are there to make sure that we have order and sanity in our country. And that order and sanity is threatened when the internet becomes a laissez-faire affair where everyone can move anything at any time. So it is my view that the right to expression and the right to privacy is in the Constitution. It should be Section 57 of the Constitution, which says you have a right to privacy. But then Section 86 then says your right to privacy is subject to limitations, as long as the limitation is fair and in terms of a law of general application, reasonable, that limitation can be exercised. So the solution to this dilemma is the government, as my brother here rightly put it, must procedurally obtain the judicial permits to be able to access people's information, because we cannot avoid that as much as we have good people using the internet, some very bad people are also on the same internet.
Okay, so maybe you can give a disclaimer whether this is you in your formal capacity or in your personal capacity.
I'm just being reasonable. Whether it's in a formal capacity or informal, I'm just being reasonable. In this day and age, any government that does not have any interest in what is happening on the internet is a stupid government.
I told you should speak last.
With issues of cyber espionage, we're talking of cyber war and things like that, the government should have a lot of interest in what is happening there. So I don't see any reason why we should be saying the government should not be looking at what is happening on the internet. If one day we woke up only to find that we've got maybe terrorists in this country, we've been using the internet to communicate, what will people say? They'll say the government has been sleeping on the wheel. They should have known about these things. Isn't that true? Yes. Thank you.
Is it still a follow-up question? I don't know if there are any other. Okay, I'll go to Mr. Batizo Jr.
Unfortunately, cyber security is a field I work in, and I also work with a lot of governments. And the problem is, personally, you can ask Mr. Batizo Senior, I don't trust government. I'm very suspicious of authorities. I don't play with them. But I'll be the first person to tell you that governments and intelligence apparatuses have a duty to do. And it's imperative that they do have a look into what we do online. I may not like it, I'll admit I don't like it. But it's a job, it's a function that they have to do. Right? But this must also be taken into account that there have to be checks and balances into how they do the job. That's when we have oversight and the like. And another thing is a question of clarity. The group that did this, they did not seem to touch on how there is no recourse when private companies or government institutions in Zimbabwe neglectfully expose people's data. Because it does happen. I have found data breaches within Zimbabwe when people's data has been neglectfully exposed. So, what is the comment on that?
Thank you. Are there any other contributions, or we go back to the questions? All right.
All right, so let me just make myself very clear. I may have been misunderstood to a certain extent. I fully understand the role that government should play, and I will agree with Mr. Njuru that every government must and will always have an interest as far as having an oversight of the internet. What I was questioning is us as stakeholders, because this is a stakeholders meeting. We are supposed to be contributing towards the Zimbabwe policy making. Are we in principle in agreement with the fact that the government should be given power within it? There's a very good example that my brother by this scholar mentioned, that the issues like warrants, whereby we now need to fully know to what extent should and must the government be allowed to actually monitor it, because the Interception Communication Act, as far as the Porters Act is concerned, I'm sure this is a very old act, more than 15 years old. It's got nothing to do with this cyber law. You can confirm that. How old is the interception of information?
I don't know, because Porters is not regulated by the Interception of Communications Act. We fall under the
It's under the Post and Telecommunications Act. Yeah. Okay, alright. Still, this is a very old act. That was the point. Yes, we just got nothing to do with this cyber laws.
No, it's not very old.
It is.
It's very relevant. I have it.
I didn't say it's irrelevant. I said old. I said old.
Which part exactly when you say
it's more than 10 years old since it was put through. Is it not? I'm talking of age, not relevant. I said it's a very old act that we've always had. It has always empowered law enforcement agents to intercept information. Right? So what I'm talking about is drawing the line to what extent should they be empowered to intercept information. Should we always know whether or not they're getting a subpoena or they're getting a warrant to actually get through information? Because we cannot have a blanket approach to say, well, these are law enforcement agents, they are allowed to intercept. So for me, we need to have clear lines where we know. Because up until now, I do not know if there's any regulation that actually clearly states that the law enforcement agents can actually intercept my information because of A, B, C, and D. I can tell you this for example, in other international countries. They are what we call trigger words. The moment somebody starts using a trigger word like a bomb, nuclear, and stuff like that, these are called trigger words. automatically international server systems, I know in the USA, that is actually for a calling to get an automatic follow-up or interception because of the certain trigger words that you're actually using. But in our case, what triggers the law enforcement agents to actually start monitoring our own information? I need to be very clear on that, and the law needs to be very clear on that, to a point that we should actually fully know how and why and to what extent can then actually instigate such an interception. It can't be they have got the power and the right because they are law enforcing agents. That's just my point.
That's what if you want to answer you. All is contained in interception, and that is they should have a warrant. And there are a number of people who should obtain that warrant and the conditions. So maybe that's the only problem is you not have privilege of going through the interception.
I get through it. I know.
I think let me intercept you. Okay, I'll give the other guys at the back there who haven't said anything an opportunity to contribute.
For the avoidance of misinterpretation, the Interception Act in Zimbabwe does not allow the government to intercept on your emails, on your phone calls. And as it says that the telecoms companies should put interception or monitoring devices on their platforms, it's not necessary that when an email is read to Kate, that's what intercepted. No. What the law provides for is for the monitoring and interception at 3 levels. 1, of the metadata. 2, of the traffic inside Zimbabwe and outside Zimbabwe, the local gateways and intra and extranet gateways that we have. And thirdly, when now it is coming to interception of data for national security purposes, 2 levels. The first level, you have to have a person of interest. And when you are a person of interest, there's a clause and there's an open warranty. And on the clause and open warranties, there are certain levels. One which you do not necessarily have to be informed about as the suspect. And secondly, for criminal purposes, open, closed, semi-closed, there are dynamics there, which you can be informed or not be informed, depending on the nature of the case. That is the current nature. It's not that, yes, they may be, but I don't have that information. But according to the law we are talking about, it doesn't give those provisions to just do it. But remember, the coming law which is coming, which we talked about earlier, yes, a provision for what we call remote forensic tools. Instead of worrying on the Interception Act, we should actually be worrying on what does we mean before these bills come into play when you call remote forensic tools for law enforcement. So let's balance the two. Things that need warrants and the metadata which is provided by the law. Thank you. Yeah, telecoms company.
Okay, I'll give to Mr. Abadiza to maybe explain further or to clarify.
Thank you. You want to pay attention. Tonio, you want to pay attention because this one is specifically for you. I think as a forum, we are indeed multi-stakeholder. And we were in that group looking at the issues from a multi-stakeholder perspective. What our presenter did is say when you look at privacy and data protection, you have to understand that the state has a need to breach what you might consider 100% privacy because of security requirements. So we recognize that, and I think Rapporteur presented that as a challenge to privacy because there will be this stakeholder who has got this mandate, who will come and possibly breach it. Then when we looked at the way forward, we came back as multi-stakeholders and recognized and recommended that the state must have sufficient tool sets to intervene, to intercept, to do the necessary in that data protection and privacy domain in the interest of protecting our overall security. So the question to us as multi-stakeholders, support the state accessing data, not willy-nilly, which is the word to use, but conditionally. And as I think the lawyer has said, I think other people have said, and Kate has said, when the legislation was crafted, and it's not as old as the PTC Act, which is nearly 20 years old. This legislation is actually fairly young as pieces of legislation. I was actually looking for the date, but I couldn't get that.
It's a 2007 Act, I know.
Yeah, okay. So that was the first draft, because the first draft of the PTC Act was 1997, which was 10 years earlier. So, as and when the draft is done, the specific procedures and arrangements for when the state does what will be outlined. And I think as stakeholders we can still debate it. But I think as multiple stakeholders we are not at all saying the state should not. We're saying it should. We're not saying when it does it should be willy-nilly. We're saying when it does it should be to fulfill the need of our common security. So are you now comfortable as one of our stakeholders that we are allowing the state to do that, and that we will prescribe the procedures under which they will do that? Then we can all speak together with one voice.
Maybe I can also add to that to say, like you gave, the example you gave of the US where there are trigger words. The trigger words don't just come from the air. There's some sort of monitoring that is going on for them to pick those trigger words that will make them zero in on someone that they will maybe actively monitor. So basically there's some like overall monitoring that is going on for trigger words and so forth. And then once they pick a trigger word, they can zero in on that specific, maybe individual or specific communication. So I think maybe something like that is what is being explained. I don't know if there are any other contributions or questions.
I asked 3 questions. That was the first question. I asked 3.
Okay, the second one was, sorry, I've also forgotten the questions.
He was highlighting, rather, that group was highlighting issues of risk because we are hosting our data outside Zimbabwe, and there was an idea of a personal perception that it has actually been proved that we can trust private players better with our data safer than raising it here with the stakeholders as a risk to say that we can't have our data being hosted outside Zimbabwe, but rather it should be hosted in Zimbabwe by the Zimbabwean government, which is his statement was, which is forgotten. But he meant us. He was leading us to believe that private players are more for the profits and they are not people-centric, and neither are they for the security and privacy of the people. Something like that. I can't really quote him well on that. That was the second question. The third question was, after he had said all this and done, he then went back and said that they are fully in support of government privatizing the state-owned enterprises, which to me is very much in contrast with what he has been saying from the onset. So I'm wondering, what is this group really made up of? Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Batita, are you going to address all the questions?
Yes, I was a member of.
Yeah, because we are running out of time.
Yes, thank you very much for those questions. It helps us to clarify what we were saying. We were definitely for the privatization of state-owned enterprises. We said that private management makes for more efficient control of the operations, and we were talking specifically of the state's telecoms assets, where there's an intention to partially privatize. We recognize that you get better efficiencies when you privatized out of the control. You might not release 100%, but you don't want to have government holding a controlling share. We recognized in our group that government is presently playing the role of policymaker, of operator, of regulator, and consumer. And we're saying this is giving rise to conflicts which are compromising. So we definitely went for that privatization of the state's telecoms assets. That was not in contradiction to the recognition that there may be additional security comfort in government hosting its own email servers. We did not recommend that there should be no private hosting of email. We did not recommend that there should be 100% hosting within the borders of Zimbabwe. Instead, we actually recognize that the internet is borderless and that some of the Zimbabwe servers or services are actually hosted outside our borders for efficiency purposes. So we did not call on everything to be in the hands of government. We definitely saw that there's a role for private. And I think one aspect of your question was, is local hosting up to the task? And we actually recognized in our group that not quite there, because some of the servers actually go down. We actually then recognized that there's a perception that government hosting is inefficient, which in certain cases is not borne by the fact, because people remember what used to happen 3 years ago, but they haven't actually bothered to inform themselves as to how efficient some of the government agencies who are providing services. And we actually recognize that I'm not advertising for Tel 1, but we actually recognize that Tel 1 has got a very efficient and competent hosting. I'm pleased you are not. So we were, in fact, from your questions and from my understanding of the discussion in the group, I think you are actually now an honorary member of our group. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. May we give a round of applause to Group 2?
4.
Oh, Group 4. Okay, I think the last group is Group 3. All right, Group 3 can come forward with their presentation.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mr. Blessing Karubita, and I'm sending in for Group 3 with our topic, Data Economy. So we're going to start with the definition. What is data economy? It reflects the need, opportunity, and obligations to monetize data assets into short and economic build on and around data is exemplified by companies which are Facebook, Alphabet, Apple, and Apple. For example, if we are spending most of our bandwidth on pornography, who is making money? An ecosystem of individuals, organizations working with data and deriving value and profit from the data, revenue, and efficiency. We have examples of companies like Uber and Airbnb, which are the best examples of data economy. Data can be splashed all over which means it is a means by which data is used to make profit. The problems and challenges. One, we are consuming both tools and content from outside our borders, even when the content is originating from Zimbabwe. We are still consuming it from outside our borders, collated and presented with tools developed outside Zimbabwe. A good example, we have channels like Nash Geo, whereby you can have a video from Gonarejo or from Nyanga National Park, but we pay a lot of money just to watch a video which is originating from Zimbabwe, but someone is taking credit for it. We have marketing of our own products, which is done from outside. We have a very good example of our most gigantic resort, holiday resort, that is the Victoria Falls. If you still remember, at some time we had South Africa boasting and having a lot of revenue from marketing Victoria Falls. The hotels would market Victoria Falls, and people would come from all over the world. They would stay in South Africa. They fly out every morning to Victoria Falls. In the evening, they come and pay a lot of money to South African hotels. Once we're just looking and we are watching, and we have maybe a small fee of maybe $10, and we think we are having revenue out of our tourism. We also have barriers to entry into the data economy. That is, we need to lower entry requirements to give locals a firm base for competing with outsiders. Examples, we have the legislation. We can have a legislation to protect locals and government barriers. We also have lack of trust, confidence, patience, and inferiority complex in local innovations. For example, we have the Indians who do use systems that are not perfect. They are not perfected, but they are functional. They fix them along the way as long as it's their own creation. So when you are in India, whether you have a problem with one system, there's no rectification. They don't rectify with another system from UK or from United States. They will use their own innovations, which we as Zimbabweans are supposed to take a leaf from. We also have a poor appreciation in the value of data and content creation. And now on the availability and accessibility of internet enhancement, focusing on infrastructure and development. On infrastructure and development, we need to develop infrastructure starting with electricity. I think all of us, we are well vexed with what we mean here. Then we have infrastructure sharing, like sharing of boosters, bandwidth, allow virtual MNOs, and allow players via the legislation. We are talking of maybe we have a remote area maybe down there in Unguza, which is having maybe maybe accessibility of internet for Econet, but maybe for network users they cannot access just because Econet and network, they could not venture into having sharing infrastructure, that one booster which they have, to have all their physical aspects on one booster and people can access internet. We also have the creation of community networks. At the moment, maybe we might not have infrastructure or money to have expensive infrastructure for people to access internet. We can just have creating a community network so that people can access internet. And what are the strengths? Zimbabweans, human capital. We have multiple skills available in Zimbabwe. We also have an eager market. One oddman from our group, he emphasized saying, Kudazvin. Zimbabweans, Vanodazvin, which is an advantage for us. with high literacy rate, which allows for easier uptake of local data innovations. The research capacity in many universities and research institutions like HIT, ZIGF, and NAST is also a good advantage. We also have demographic strength in the majority of data products consumed by youth and mostly tweens. On opportunities, we have gaps. For example, internet penetration is still around 60%. That is an opportunity of 40%, which we can still utilize on. We also have open source hardware and software for use in developing data products. We also have a unique culture and experiences, and we can easily export it, like how the Nigerians export their music culture. And here in Zimbabwe, we have our own, for example, Kanzatu application, which was developed by Econet, which has a Zimbabwean culture. What are the threats that we are likely to face? We are most likely to run the risk of being overtaken by events because of the data economy. Because of this data economy, the field is so much dynamic. We also have cyber threats. And to some extent, job losses. For example, when we bring in artificial intelligence, there's also lack of forex or foreign currency for purchasing access to the backbone and funds coming with attachment. I think it was earlier explained in the morning, whereby because of the love of money or funding, we have foreign investors when they come. Achieve. And what are the solutions? Research and incubation centers for testing and experimenting with innovations. You can also have education and training and awareness of the value of data. We can also equip our manpower and citizenry with cyber intelligence and cyber defense skills. We can also make technology work for everyone and be understood by everyone, and each person will find their space in the economy. The legislator also have to protect and safeguard local innovations. We're having examples from, say, China. They have a good legislature which protects their local scientists and whatever, in such a way that maybe probably in a space of 1 year, all these problems that we may face in data economy might just vanish. We also have legislation that forces companies to invest in local innovations. And as Group 3, we recommended, number one, some policies to safeguard local innovations. Secondly, the government should not use, in particular, software products that are not developed in Zimbabwe as a starting point. Also have policies to support R&D. Every government parastatal should have an R&D partnership with, for example, say, universities. And then on the technical, as I said, infrastructure sharing, we can build more human capital expertise and introduce technical skills from grassroots. As long Leon batteries and built the power plants to harness wind energy and biogas. Our government also need to relax the environmental laws and to remove the one-size-fits-all laws, for example, the EMA requirements for building a mere data center. EMA will, for example, rationalize their requirements, some of them which are for extortionists, extorting customers in nature and cannot be achieved. On research, the government must find research via grants and prizes, which in turn will encourage our local innovators to do more. The government should introduce incentives to private companies, for funding research. And lastly, I give the platform for questions. Thank you.
Very nice presentation. My first question, do you think it's practical what you were saying? For example, Zimbabwe is developing our own products. I can give an example. There is a bank that I bank with. They have two different systems. They recently upgraded their two websites, but you cannot do an internal transfer via their web portal to another account. Let's say, for example, from a corporate to another, to an individual account. So do you think it's possible for us as Zimbabweans to develop our own products? And do we have individuals who have that kind of knowledge? Because from the startups that we have here in Zimbabwe, most of them, they're just not unique.
Thank you for your question. I'm so much concerned not by your question, but by your lack of trust in our local expertise. We have so much talent in Zimbabwe. Yeah, we have so much talent in Zimbabwe, and
thank you. You mentioned two things. The first one was, do we have the skills? And then you mentioned the issue of uniqueness. You have to go with one thing, and those are the questions we should be asking. As for skills, I don't think we can argue on that. The skills are there, but the lack of trust is the problem. We don't have the patience and the trust in our own work. We would rather just go and buy something off the shelf that you probably use 10% of, instead of waiting for your own product that you build to your own specifications and allow it to mature. Right now, I'm sure those coming from the banks will probably be having trouble with the new monetary policy, where they're being asked to change the calculations for tax and things like that. Because in most of their contracts, they're not allowed to touch the core banking system. It's not theirs. You have to bring in someone from India to come and fix T24 for you to change anything. But if we could only wait and give ourselves time to work on our own products that we can be proud of, that we can nurture and develop along the way until they mature, I'm sure we could make much more progress. Imagine the licensing fees that go towards SAP, for example, and these banking systems. Imagine how much forex we are bleeding. But we have the skills. What we don't have is the patience and trust and a sense of inferiority that is inherent in us. Which is very wrong. If you go to South Africa, the banking industry, in terms of the tech skills, Zimbabweans. That's just a simple example. UK, you have Zimbabweans there. Australia, you have a lot of Zimbabweans in their tech space. Same Zimbabweans who are here and living because we're saying they do not have the skills. I don't know, I could go on for the whole day. Do we have the time?
In the interest of time, I think we get the point that maybe we have enough adequate local and international experts. Because I think once we say local, people are not really satisfied. But our local experts are also experts on the international scene. So we have, that's what I was trying to say. I don't know if there's anyone else with any questions. We are running out of time. So I'll just give one more question and then we can wrap up.
I'll start off with a disclaimer. I'm not a porn addict, even a porn fan, but your introduction, you started off with the porn, so you brought back the topic, which was already gone. So since this is a new presenter, a new topic, and talking about the same issue, I'm also allowed to just bring it back, because it did. From the context where you said that, or where we have all agreed that porn is driving a larger part of Zimbabwean data, it's not a question of contribution. I would like to think that this should be a lesson to us as Zimbabwe to say, where are we bleeding out most in data, and what can we do to capture so much so that we also cut on the cost of importing data. I think we instead of us pointing out at porn, I'm not advocating for local porn actors, but it would be better if so much local guys doing a lot on the internet. They can choose whatsoever they wish. I would support them, but so that we just stop bleeding out us exporting them. It doesn't make sense for us to have Japanese latest album, for example. That's a bit of clean content, local content. I'll use them. For him to have millions of views, what are we doing as Zimbabweans? We are all hitting our tier 1, our power tier, whatsoever servers, then ultimately we are using the Liquid Gateway to hit a San Francisco US-based YouTube server, only to come back and then get back the content same on our screens. So why are we not using a very good local example, like I've already admitted with Mr. Kwetsu, that tier 1 has got fairly reliable local hosting. Imagine if all these guys would first think of tier 1 server before they think of YouTube. I think it would make Zimbabwe better content. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so I think in summary, it's just saying let's host our content locally where possible.
This is a contribution. I think when we are talking about the data economy, we are talking about something that's very global. And we constantly come back to saying Zimbabwe, 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 and we're being too protectionist about it. Because when you say we have the human capital, it's a myth. We don't. Because foreign companies are coming into Zimbabwe and taking this talent and they're going away with it. When you say we have the capacity to consume locally made softwares and the like, we don't have the capacity because foreign companies are also competing with us for the same thing. So let's take a global perspective and try to compete on these guys' own turf out there.
Thank you very much. Mr. Tawanda, I won't be taking any more questions or contributions, unfortunately. If it's something that is maybe you can have it captured by the
All right, good evening. Or still good afternoon, depending on the country you're in. Just what I will do. All right. There is the drafts committee for the Thematic and Governance Forum for 2018. I'll read. We, the participants to the Zimbabwe Internet Governance Forum, ZIGF, here at Rainbow Towers in Harare, Zimbabwe, on the 8th and 9th of October 2018, acknowledging the diversity of interests, perspectives, strength, and weaknesses of Internet stakeholders, such as civic society, government, service providers, researchers, and consumers, recognizing the various stakeholders' rights, views, and perspectives, cognizant that we are in a global community and Internet knows no geographical boundaries, recalling that the African Union Conference of Ministers responsible for information and communication technology, ICT, in their 2012 Karan Declaration, requested members to promote the organization of National Internet Governance Forums, NIGFs, and the facilitating dialogue between all stakeholders, ICT policy development issues, and facilitate participation of their respective countries in regional and African IGF activities, as well as the global IGF. Further recalling that ZIGF had from 3 to 5 September 2014 in Lilongwe, Malawi, resolved that SADC will support National Internet Governance Forum, aware that the Southern African Internet Governance Forum convened by SADC, African Internet Governance Forum convened by African Union, Internet Governance Forum convened by United Nations. You have planned Internet Governance Forum to be held after the ZIGF. And further aware that our outputs will be submitted to these forums as Zimbabwe Internet Governance Forum position and recommendations. Recognizing the President of the Deputy Minister of Information, Communication and Technology and Courier Services, Honorable Maswere MP, the Secretary for Information, Communication, Technology and Courier Services, Dr. Engineer Pundishora, Acting Director General of POTRAS, Ms. Alfred Marisa, who are the current ZIGF Secretariat. Official opening and keynote delivered by the Honorable Deputy Minister of ICT and Courier Services. Knowing that there are 3 bills to be tabled before Parliament and a cybersecurity policy seeking to address parts of the thematic topics as follows. 1. Cybercrime and Cybersecurity Bill, Data Protection Bill, E-commerce and Transactions Bill, Cyber Security Policy. Noting that the ZIGF comprises of a public forum and an advisory group known as the Multi-Stakeholder Coordinating, or MCT, and the Secretariat as the main institutions of ZIGF. Noting that ZIGF 2018 agreed theme was the Internet we want. This theme was supported by 4 sub-themes that frame the discussion, mainly cybersecurity and cybercrime, cost in access to internet, data economy, privacy, and data protection. Agreeing that the internet we want is an internet with the following 9 characteristics. 1. Improves our quality of life. I think you know the proponent of that one. 2. Human rights centered. 3. Secure, open, accessible, affordable, available, stable, and usable. Recommend that in accordance with our thematic areas, cyber security and cybercrime, on overall policy, speed enactment of Computer and Cyber Bill, Data Protection Bill, and Intercept and Commerce Bill, public release of crime statistics, promote use of local expert security, ensure adherence to the Zimbabwe Constitution on national security issues, enforcement, and privacy. Cyber security gets part of its funding from the Universal Service Fund, USF. Internet Governance Forum, be funded from USF. Capacitate security sector to secure and protect critical information infrastructure, CNI, and to protect citizens, parliament, and judiciary, and other stakeholders to play their role, to play their constitutional roles and responsibilities regarding cyber security, cybercrime, and private governance. Capacitate law enforcement agencies and judiciary to deal with cybercrime. Technical, invest in tools and softwares. Establishment of the sector as soon as possible. On social and economical, promote and facilitate awareness. Research, invest in research and partner academic institutions on other issues. International cooperation and collaboration. Thematic area number 2, cost and access. On policy, develop and fully implement the national policy and legislation on costs and access. On technical, develop and invest in skilled manpower. On economical, ensure affordable data and discourage profiteering. On research, promote continuous research. Number 3, data economy, overall policy. To safeguard local innovations, government promote and develop and use local software. Mandatory R&D policies for every government associated institution. Government to fund research via grants and prizes. Government to introduce incentives to private companies funding research. Foster innovation and problem solving through our education system. Break silos between disciplines and allow synergies across disciplines to develop a wholesome products. Technical, promote and ensure infrastructure sharing, build more capital expertise, introduce technical skills from the grassroots. Social economical, nurture a sense of responsibility and patriotism from a tender age. National brand and national vision that goes beyond politics, work to stem out corruption. Privacy and data protection. Overall policy. Ensure trustship of the consumer funds to be in the hands of the consumers, not the regulator. Policy on importation substitution. Policy on regional integration, harmonization of policies and laws. Speed enactment of cyber laws. Technical, more resources on the acquisition of technical resources and skills. Socio-economical, improvement on accountability and good governance. Research, promote research and promote use of local design tools and hardware solutions. On other issues, total privatization of all government-owned telecoms players. The government concentrate on regulation. Government has been a policymaker, regulator, and operator, as well as consumer. Government to develop an environment that promotes entrepreneurship and ease of doing business to new entrants. The regulator to focus primarily on regulative roles. Further research on issues such as pornography on the internet. Yes, of course, it found its way to the community. So ladies, be happy. Your issue response its way in there. Capturing the recommendations of the aforementioned thematic areas in the forum proceeding reports. This means the reports that will come with all the issues that we discussed. Here we're just taking the recommendations and all the other issues will be within the report. Urge all stakeholders to participate and support ZIGF financially, technically, and with ideas. Further urge the Ministry of Information, Communication, Technology, and Courier Services and Port Trust to continue support the ZIGF in the associated follow-up processes. Thank the multi-stakeholder coordinating MCT and the Postal and Telecommunications Regulatory Authority of Zimbabwe, Port Trust, that have provided material and financial resources. Thank all the presenters and online and on-site participants. Harare, Zimbabwe, Tuesday, 9 October, the year of our Lord 2018. Thank you. I move a motion for us to adopt the communique if it reflects our positions. Who moves the motion? Yes. Do we second?
Point of order, Chair.
Yes.
Yeah. My point of order is simple. Yes, there may be things in the communique that participants might want to comment on before we carry.
Okay.
And one of the things that I wanted to include, if I may,
yes, sir,
is the fact that there's a presenter here, his name escapes me, from the UZ, chairman of the Internet Society. His name? Yes. He made a very valid point yesterday, which because he wasn't going to be here, I think he can actually make the recommendation that we must now have these producers who are also consumers. Because what he was presenting on was the community as operators of internet access. And he gave Murambinda as an example. But his recommendation was that we must facilitate. And he was saying we're not drawing from USF at the moment. We're doing our own things, but this will need to be propagated. Where you have communities, you have their own networks. And he called it pro-humans or something like he called it. So I think we would need to capture that because it's a very valid point where the internet was stopping at the post office. The community wanted to bring it into their homes. Yeah. So that point, I don't know where we can fit it in. I noted that point that he made. And then the other contribution that I might make is on where the Port Trust was going to focus on its primary responsibility roles. There's something that we lost there from my recollection of the group discussion, that the reason why they were being urged to focus on their regulatory roles is so that they don't seem to carry some security roles which belong elsewhere.
Okay.
So it is, and drop any pretense at being a security agent. They should just be a regulator and leave the security to the security. Okay. Thank you.
The one on the presentation, the reason why it was not captured within the thematics feedbacks, because the thematics was dealing with access didn't capture it in their recommendations, but it will be captured on the tidy proceedings report of the presentations, unless the thematic grouping that did access wants to have an addendum to their recommendations. Because these recommendations we just copy
and paste it. But yes, we can add that one.
That was doing access. I thought the community networks and so forth was discussed.
They could have discussed it, but within their recommendations, it was not there.
No, I didn't get it. But you're saying we can have.
So, do we agree to add it in? Okay. That is on access, right? Okay. Promotes community. What got internet?